Hello and welcome to another Magic the Gathering video. In this particular video we're not going to be doing any unboxing, but we will be taking a look at the new set, that's Shadows Over Innistrad. This is not going to be a set review though, this is more going to be a set overview, because there's plenty of set reviews already out there that would do a far better job and do a far better job than I could ever do. So I thought what I would do, which would be more interesting, is just give you a bit of an overview of what the set's about, what sort of mechanics to watch out for, what the tribal themes are, maybe coloured pairings, things like that. Really just going through, and again in overview, looking for a few pointers. If you are interested in set reviews, I can sort of point you in the right direction on this. So the ones that I most have listened to over the years and read are some of the following. This isn't all of them, but this is some of them. So one of my favourite ones, I always make a point of reading it every set release. Currently he's up to red as of today, so this is the 31st of March 2016, and this is LSV's limited set reviews. He also always does a constructed set as well. So we're up to red, and it goes through, looks at the rating scale for all the cards and gives explanations for why he's rated them, and also a rationale as to why they may be at this point inaccurate on some of them, because of course you need to find out how the cards are going to play out ultimately. So that's I always find that's a really good starting point. It's useful if you're trying to work out like pick orders or get a feel for some synergies that are going on. Another one that I've noticed that they've started doing is Budget MTG decks have started doing set reviews, and they're also up to red as of today. Obviously a lot of people are going to be familiar with limited resources, so as of today they've got the commons and uncommons set reviews up. Outside of limited play, because obviously these are mainly focused on both sealed, as in what will be played at the pre-release, and obviously drafting. But I also like to read the set review that is done by Sheldon Menery, which is the Commander set review. So that's always interesting. Now the other thing to note, which is this is pretty unique, and if you didn't catch it at the weekend, you can go onto Twitch and you can watch the video on demand that they have for this. So Loading Ready Run, and if you don't know who Loading Ready Run is, I would suggest you check out their website, because they do lots of different things. One of the things they do cover is Magic the Gathering, and one thing they were able to organise with Wizards was what they called a pre-release. So they managed to negotiate with Wizards access to 8 pre-release packs, and what they ended up doing was running a series of single elimination matches with 8 people. And so they've spread that over 3 videos. They've actually uploaded it to their Twitch channel in the area for past broadcasts. They're not specifically numbered for the order, but you can sort of work out, because the videos at the top are the most recent videos. So if you work backwards to the Shadows Over Innistrad pre-release, this one here, which would be the furthest back of the 3, is the first video in the series, and then there's the next one and the one after that, basically. And the good thing about this is it's a real opportunity to actually see the interactions for real actually play out within a one-on-one environment. The only slight difference is in this particular setup, and obviously for time constraints and filming constraints, it was run as a single elimination event. At a pre-release, it's run as rounds of Swiss. So basically you get to play, you can carry on playing even if you've lost your previous match, whereas in a in single elimination, once you get eliminated, that's it, you're out. So definitely a good way of seeing how cards interact, and it was interesting to see a lot of cards being played that if you went by like a set review and the pick orders and what were good and bad cards, it's interesting to see some cards which normally you wouldn't be considered to be that good doing some very clever things. Also on here, it's gone up, and there was a bit of a delay in doing this. I don't know what was on Wizards' mind and why they did this. Is they took their time in actually releasing the deck list for the intro pack decks. Sometimes this is useful. I find that I much preferred when they made theme decks. The themes from the set sort of were more apparent. I find with a lot of the intro decks now, a lot of the stuff that they could do, they either don't do or they water it down. So they've basically got 5 decks, as always. They always release 5 decks, well, normally. They have a blue-white, looks like basically a spirits deck with some card draw in it. They have this blue-green deck, which to me looks like it's the Investigate deck, which is one of the keywords stroke abilities in use, and we'll talk about that in a moment. They have a Vampires deck, which has Madness in it, and so there are also some discard enablers in here. They have a deck called Angelic Fury, which is a red-white deck. I don't know if you can see, this is a bit of a mixture of things. Topping it off with an angel. And then we have a Horrific Visions deck, which is green and black. And also it's the only one which actually in the land base has any form of extra mana smoothing using one of the uncommon lands, and also, interestingly enough, a warped landscape. And in here we have an interesting mixture of horrors, nightmares, zombies, scarecrows, and various other things. Looks quite interesting, actually. But anyway, it gives you an idea of possible colour combinations in the set. But hopefully as we go through this using Decked Builder, we're sort of going to unearth certain combinations here, how the combinations fit with the themes and mechanics of the set, and how they fit with the tribal side of things. So the set itself is 297 cards, and I'm including in that the 15 basic lands, and also 105 commons, 100 uncommons, 59 rares, 18 mythic rares. There is a number of tokens which are attributed to the set. So you've got angel tokens, obviously vampires, zombies, devils, insects, oozes, wolves, that sort of things. And there's these clue tokens as well, which we'll come on in a moment, which is to do with the Investigate. So let's switch over to my deck building program that I like to use. At the moment, this hasn't been, although it's got the new card artwork in it, it doesn't have the high def versions yet. So we'll just have to put up with this sort of slightly grainy images on here. So first up, I think what I'm going to do is just go through and take a look at some of the themes and how they represent themselves at the different rarities. So if you are using this to give you sort of an overview of, say, limited play, you're going to maybe be interested in the balance with, how themes and mechanics manifest themselves in commons, uncommons, and then the higher rarities. So what I'll do then is we will firstly look at discard mattering. So we're looking for discard as a word within Shadows Over Innistrad. And you can see we have quite a number of cards here that have discard somewhere in their rules text. They may have other things on them as well, so there's a card with menace. But you can see a lot of them here, the reason why they have discard on them, or the reason why there's an interest in discard in the set, is because you have this madness ability. So this particular card, which is Gisa's Bidding, which is 2 and 2 black for a sorcery, and it puts two black zombie creature tokens onto the battlefield. If you're able to discard this from your hand, it will only cost you 2 and a black. So you've got to have some form of discard enabler that's also basically causing you to discard. So there are some things that have discards attached to them and can enable that. There's equipment, which has to equip discard a card. There's things like Creeping Dread, which also have discard on them. There's another Madness card. I'm just trying to find some discard triggers. So here we have Tormenting Voice. So you can see we've got both here. Not surprisingly, we have cards that care about discarding, which have madness on them, and cards that will cause discarding to happen. Now let's just see how this pans out across the different rarities so you can get some feel, and also the colours that this might happen in. So you can see here, as a general rule, we've got both discard enablers and recipients of discarding with their madness in mainly black, blue and red. There's one here in white, basically. If we move on to our uncommons, we can see again black, blue and red with one solitary green card, which is Pack Guardian, which way you may discard a land card and put a token on the battlefield. But you can see all the others are either black, red or blue. And again, either cards with madness on them or cards that discard. And then moving up to our rarity up to rare, you can see a lot less here. But again, this mixture going on of creatures and some things with madness. Also, we're seeing Skulk here. We'll take a look at Skulk in a moment. So clearly, it looks like we have a lot of discard enablers and a lot of madness cards in here at various rarities, but the large majority of those cards are at uncommon and common, which is obviously really helpful for drafting purposes. So if there's enough good quality cards in there, you've got a plausible discard deck within those colours, within blue, red and black, if you just ignore the odd ones in the other colours there. So that's one thing. What about with all this discard going on? Do we have anything that really cares about the graveyard? So let's have a look. So we're just going to start off with uncommon. So we've got a number of things that care about the graveyard here. And the big thing that's in the set which cares about the graveyard is delirium. Now you can see if I just search for graveyard, we've got a lot of graveyard interaction that's across the different colours here. Now, not surprisingly, we're probably going to see slightly more graveyard related stuff in green and black. But let's just see if we start to focus on delirium, which is this particular keyword which cares about having 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyard. So let's have a look at delirium. So you can see here at common, green, white and black care about delirium. We have a number of creatures here, but also there is a non-creature spell, this instant here, which has delirium on it. As we move up the rarity, we seemingly shift colours. So blue now has come into it, as has white, red, another blue card there, and green and black again. So we're now seeing delirium add on common in white, black, green, blue and a single red there. If we move up to the next rarity, you can see here green, black, white and red. And finally, if we just factor in some mythic rares, got a couple here, a black and a white one. So you can see it is across multiple colours, but again, if we're caring about what is going to show through, if we're primarily going to see the lower rarity cards, we can start to see we've got green and black there with some white. So the green, black, white is what we're going to sort of care about if we're thinking of going down and experimenting with delirium. So you notice another one that came up there was something called Skulk. So let's have a look at some of the colours which Skulk seems to be present in. So this is another new ability. It's very interesting. It's a sort of evasion, but at the other end. I'll show you what I mean. So we're probably used to seeing evasion in the form of flyers. This is very interesting. Let's look at a fairly small creature here. What I'm looking for is, here's a 1/1. So with Skulk, the creature can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. So it's sort of skulking under and doing damage that way. So damage is going to basically get through if it goes up against creatures which have greater power than it does, basically. So you can see, just looking at Skulk on all cards, there's not that many really spread out across all rarities. If I just have a look here at the rarity itself and start to do that, you can see at common we've only got 3 cards with Skulk on them. At uncommon there's 4, including a equipment artifact, 2 at rare and none at mythic rare. So it's not that well represented. If we were looking for a blue-black Skulk deck, that could be quite difficult to pull off. But obviously what we would be doing is using that in a wider plan. And we'll see how in a moment blue-black is reflected within the tribal aspect of the deck. And then it might become more apparent as to where we might be able to fit Skulk into this. So the other thing in here, we've talked about delirium, we've talked about Skulk. We'll have a look at this other ability called investigate. Now investigate is interesting. So investigate, let me just slim down these a bit so we just look in the commons. So with Investigate, what it does is it basically puts a colourless clue artifact token onto the battlefield with 2 sacrifices artifact and draw a card. So you've got a good degree of card draw going on. Now it's common, what we're seeing here is we're seeing Investigate in 3 colours. We're seeing it in green, blue and white on here. Both on creatures, obviously triggered by something. So there's an enter the battlefield trigger on that one. There's an enter the battlefield trigger on that one. There's effectively a leave the battlefield, or when the creature dies, trigger on that one. Other cards like regular spells, they have a spell and they've got Investigate sort of glued onto that as well. If we move rarities, what do we see? Oops. So here in uncommon, we're seeing stronger representation in blue and green, a little bit in white here. Again, we've got a bit of a mixture. We've got it in spirits, enchantments, artifacts, those sort of things. Okay, so it's sort of all over the place, really. What about rares? Sorcery, spirits, instants, legendary artifacts. Now, my suspicions are with a lot of these, some of the higher rarities, you're going to see some of the payoffs of actually accumulating these artifact tokens. I mean, admittedly, you can use these tokens, you can sort of sacrifice them to just draw the card, obviously, at any point. But there may be other things in the set which allow you to do other things with those clue tokens. So again, just watch out for those. Now, of course, because they're at the higher rarities, you may never see them when you're drafting. So the question is what would a blue-green clues deck look like? Clearly we're getting card draw at a cost here. But hopefully once we go through and read our set reviews, we might be able to get a better idea of what the stronger cards are and which ones would work, and then from that seeing which ones are basically able to use in an Investigate deck. But it looks like it's primarily green and blue for that. Now also in the set is the transform. So let me go back to commons and we'll just see what sort of transform we have at common. So it's no surprise that we've got a number of werewolves here. So you can see these are transforming. There we go. So the human werewolves transforming into werewolves. So if you're not again familiar with transform, it's been used before in the original Innistrad block. What happens is something triggers, or the lack of something triggers the transform. So in this case, if at the beginning of each upkeep, if no spells were cast last turn, you transform this card. This card transforms into Timber Shredder, and this one, if at the beginning of each upkeep, if a player casts 2 or more spells last turn, then it transforms back. So we have 4 transform creatures in green and red, which is the colour combination for werewolves. We can see once we get to uncommon, we've got a lot more transformations going on. And it's across multiple colours here. Let's just see what they end up as. So this one ends up as a rabble. So obviously what they're trying to do is keep things on theme based on the transformation. But certainly for red and green, you can see we've got transformations into werewolves, and in the other colours there's relevant transformations. Actually, that's not a transform, but that does. See what the spirit would transform into. Also has Skulk on it, this one. So again, that just gives you some idea. We've also got stuff that's transforming from creatures into, in this case, an aura curse. Now things start to get interesting at some of the higher rarities. Obviously, again, we've got some green and red creatures here which are transforming into werewolves, and as we saw, the other colours transforming into a sort of relevant creature. Let's hit the mythic rare spot and see what we have. So this is where it gets interesting. We have a transforming planeswalker, which we have had before. It's not the first time, but it's always interesting to see in a set. We have a sorcery that transforms to a creature. That's in blue. And we have a legendary creature that transforms into sort of an alternative form. This is the Archangel Avacyn. Now also somewhere in amongst all of this, there is a land, I believe, that transforms, and I'm just trying to find it. Let me just see if I can locate it. I thought there was a land that transforms into a demon. Maybe I was wrong. Okay. So the other thing that I often like to look at when I'm sort of, getting a feel for a set is the legends on here. So it's always interesting to see from a theme perspective what we've got with legendary status. So you can see here we've got Olivia mobilised for 4, which is a black-red creature. We've got Odric as mono-white. Archangel Avacyn, which transforms from white into a red creature. Sigarda is in here, green-white. We have a legendary artifact, and we have the Gitrog monster, which is a black-green legendary creature frog horror with death touch, and at the beginning of your upkeep sacrifice the Gitrog monster unless you sacrifice a land. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Whenever one or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. So those are the legendary. While we're doing this, let's have a look and see what planeswalkers are in the set. So in red-green, we've seen this one earlier. This is the planeswalker that transforms. We've got Nahiri in red-white. We have Jace in here, Unraveler of Secrets, and in blue, mono blue, and we have Sorin, Grim Nemesis in white black. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to have a look at some of the tribes and the colour combinations. So first up, we will have a look and see what sort of spirit we have, because that's obviously in here. And again, I'm just going to go through the rarities so we can sort of see you know, if you're drafting this or playing sealed, what sort of things you're going to expect to see more than other things. So at common level, most of our spirits are in white and blue, and you can see, apart from that one of them had delirium on it. There's one here. And there's also a black Skulk spirit with lifelink as well on it. So if we move up the rarity, let's just see at uncommon, we've got a spirit snuck in there, wolf spirit on green, another black spirit creature, but again predominantly stuff that either is a spirit or cares about spirits is in white and blue. So obviously we have, with a lot of these, we've got several flyers. So this is also, in effect, a white-blue skies archetype that we could consider drafting or selecting from our sealed pool if we're doing the pre-release. We get to rare and our spirits sort of fall off. This one actually cares about humans, it just puts spirits into play. But you can see there's a use of rattle chains, has flash and flying, and Drogskull Cavalry is another one that puts spirits into play, and itself has flying. And then finally, let's just top it off with look at Mythic. There's nothing there on the spirit front. So white-blue spirits are a thing. And like I said, there's a few other cards in other colours there as well, which are spirits. Zombies. Well, we already sort of know what they're going to be in because we've... zombie. We've seen a few. So at common... it's blue-black. No surprise there. So the other thing we're seeing here, we've got a Skulk creature, a bit of flying, a bit of delirium. What about as we go up to uncommon? Do we see more in uncommon? Slightly less, but again it's still in blue-black. Some horrors, a zombie horse. So zombies here, obviously. Rarity, zombie giant, zombie horror, some sorceries that will generate zombies, and also that one has madness on it. And some stuff that'll actually return creatures from your graveyard. And at Mythic Rare we've got Relentless Dead with Menace on it, so this can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. And an ability here which will return a target zombie creature card with converted mana cost X from your graveyard. And Geralf's Masterpiece as well is a zombie, and it has discard on it. So blue-black is our zombies. Vampires again. Oh, not vampire. Vampire. Okay, black-red. But how is this reflecting our rarities? You can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 at common. And again, some of these may not be particularly playable. Another 7 at uncommon. 4 at rare. And there's a couple of mythic rares that we've seen earlier. 1 planeswalker, 1 legendary creature. So next tribe we've got to look at. We're going to look at werewolves, and again we're already pretty clear in our heads how this is going to come out. So this is going to be green red. We've got a few here. We've got about 5. Now the other thing is that there are a number of wolves here as well, which would be worth looking for. This particular one, the reason why it's come up is because it cares about the fact you've got a werewolf in play. But before we do that and just look for straight wolves, let's just see here. So again, no surprise, red, green. Stuff that cares about wolves or werewolves as well on colour. Going up to rare, you can see 3 here. So this is obviously where a lot of our transform is, and there's nothing going on at Mythic Rare. So I'm just going to look for just all the wolves. Yeah. So we have a heavy wolf present in the set. So definitely something to aim for. There's 4 uncommon, common, 5 an uncommon, including one that cares about. We've got 2 there that care about wolves, and that one puts wolves into play. Couple at rare, and here again we've got Arlene Cord, who cares about wolves, and Wolf of Devil's Breach, which is a creature elemental wolf 5/5. Whenever Wolf of Devil Breach attacks, you may pay 1 red and discard a card. If you do, Wolf of Devil's Breach deals damage to target creature or planeswalker equal to the discard card's converted mana cost. And then finally, last tribe I really want to look at is humans. So let me just switch back on the rarity because we're currently there. I keep doing humans, I mean human. Okay, so a lot of humans in the set across all the colours. White, green, black, blue. And obviously what you're going to find is for those particular cards, we're going to see a lot of the keywords and themes reflected in there. Now, my understanding is that in terms of, purely like a human tribal thing and looking for 2 colours for that, then that would be green, white, basically. Again, uncommons, awful lot of humans. Rares, slightly more manageable amount. We've got a red one there. So lots of interesting things going on in human tribal. So the other thing I want to just take a look at is, because you probably noticed that there's several gold bordered, 2 colour cards. So sometimes looking at cards which are purely 2 colours can sometimes give us ideas about possible themes that we may not have spotted. So far we've been looking at tribal elements, so spirits white blue, zombies blue black, vampires black and red, werewolves red and green, humans green and white, and we've seen how some of the keywords like delirium, investigate, madness, skulk, transform, seem to gravitate towards certain colour combinations as well, even 3 colour combinations. If we just have a look at Madness, for instance, we can see in the case of Madness, if we again switch to a rarity of Common, we're seeing here red, blue, black flowing through. So some of these, with the case of the themes and the mechanics, they seem to be spread across like 3 colours or more. With the case of Tribal, except for humans, they seem to be gravitating around 2 colours. Now with the Tribal aspect, it would seem to be like allied coloured pairs: white, blue, blue, black, black, red, red, green, green, white. So what would be interesting to do is for the colour combinations, just have a quick look and see what we get. So I'm going to take off the rarity here because I'm just interested in finding at least one card which is going to have white and blue only. So we've got Invocation of Saint Traft. It's enchanted creature has, whenever this creature attacks, put a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying onto the battlefield tapped and attacking, exile that token at end of turn. So no surprise with blue-white, we've got this sort of flyer theme going on. It's an enchantment. So with this, I'm not necessarily saying whether these cards are good or bad. I'm just saying it's quite a good way of getting a feel for maybe something we might have missed. So I'm going to look at white-black now. So a couple here that have come up. One is Anguished Unmaking. Exile target non-land permanent, you lose 3 life. So a good combination of white and black. We're exiling stuff and we're also causing life loss. And as we saw earlier, Sorin Grim Nemesis is in white-black. So what's he up to? Well, for +1 we get to reveal the top card of our library and put that card into our hand. Each opponent loses life equal to its converted mana cost. Sorin Grim Nemesis deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker and you gain X life. So what we've got here is lifelink going on. So then the question is there some sort of white-black lifelink theme in this particular set, or are we going to see it in the next set on? Put a number of 1/1 black vampire knight creature tokens with lifelink onto the battlefield equal to the highest life total among all players. So what we could in fact do is, if I was to clear this off, I won't do this now, we could do a search on lifelink and just see what sort of cards are we seeing lifelink in. Is that going to give us a clue? So we've got white-red now, Nahiri, which we've seen earlier. Discard a card, draw a card, exile target enchantment, tapped artifact or tapped creature, search your library for an artifact or creature card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. It gains haste, return it to your hand at the beginning of the end step. So there's there's rummaging going on here, which there is in some of the other red cards in the set. There's the ability to exile a target enchantment, tapped artifact, or a tapped creature as well in here. So white-green is our angel flying. You and humans control. Well, not surprisingly, we noticed that green-white was the tribal combination for humans. So that again just sort of reinforces that's going to be a thing. So now, if I now just go through these color combinations, prized amalgam. What have we got going on in blue and black? If you remember, blue and black was zombies. For our tribal side of things, it's a creature zombie. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, if it enters from your graveyard or you cast it from your graveyard, return prized amalgam from the graveyard to the battlefield tapped at the beginning of the next end step. So there's some graveyard shenanigans going on there. Blue-red. Let's have a look. So some of these key combinations we definitely haven't looked at yet. So with blue-red, at the beginning of each player's end step, that player draws a card. So we have a Howling Mind type effect here, but in addition we've got this, if the player is your opponent and has 4 or more cards in hand, Fevered Visions deals 2 damage to him or her. So this could potentially be difficult to pull off, and of course what you're doing is you're giving your opponent card draw as well as yourself. Ultimately, of course, you're punishing them once they get above 4 cards, but if they've got good mana, they're going to be casting those cards that you're giving them. So I don't know if that really tells us much more about the set generally, as whether there be anything we need to look at. Is there any other cards in the set which punish your opponent for having cards in hand? Or is there any sort of hand manipulation here in well, this isn't really the colour for that, and of course if you did anything like that it would defeat the object of trying to get cards in their hand. Are there any cards in here which grab cards from a player's hand, effectively stealing them so you can play them? So maybe we should look through and see if there's anything that cares about what's in your hand or what's in the player's hand. Green-blue, Altered Ego can't be countered. You may have Altered Ego enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield, except it enters with X additional +1/+1 counters on it. I didn't see any counter manipulation going on as such. So again, you might want to go through and just do a search on counters and see if there's any sort of counter sub theme in here. Maybe again it's something that's going to appear. Maybe this is a card predominantly for Commander EDH, because that could be a thing. That's another thing. Sometimes you get cards turn up in a set which don't really make any sense, and it turns out that they were put in there for a certain format to please that particular group of players. We've seen Olivia, black-red, not surprising, vampire. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may discard a card. So we've got the card discard. The discard matters as well going on here, because when we looked through and we did search on discard, we were noticing that was a thing in these colours. If you do put a +1/+1 counter on that creature, it gains haste. See, common red thing you see until end of turn, and it becomes a vampire in addition to its other types. So if we've got any other cards that care about vampires, that's going to facilitate that. But again, of course, what we're dealing with here is a lot of the cards that we're looking at are at the higher rarities, so you probably won't see these in, say, in a draft necessarily, or in a sealed pool. But if you did see one, then obviously it's tempting to know, what is can I build around this in some way? Are there commons and uncommons that would synergize with this in some way? Black-green, we've already looked at Gitrog, this 6/6 Death Touch for 3 and a black-green, which basically allows us to, well, actually it doesn't allow us to, we have to. So we have to sacrifice lands. If we don't, we have to sacrifice Gitrog, so he ends up in our graveyard. But we get to play additional lands. Whenever one or more land cards are put into your graveyard from anywhere, draw a card. So we're drawing more cards through doing this. And of course, what we might want to look for is anything else that could get us to draw cards. So is there some sort of investigate type thing which we can do with this within our commons and uncommons? And then finally, let's just look at red-black. I think we know what this is going to be. Basically the transforming planeswalker that transforms into a werewolf. So again, just what we were doing there is really just going through all the different colour combinations, seeing are there any cards in that colour combination, and to whether or not they will make us go in a certain direction. A couple more things I want to do before I wrap up this video is to have a look at artifacts in here. It's always interesting to have a look at the artifacts, at the different rarities, because obviously they're cards that you can play in any deck. We've got a card here that cares about humans, piece of equipment. Basically, it pumps and gives vigilance, but it gives an extra +1 on the power side of things if it's a human. This is a card which also has a synergy between. This is interesting because it's milling, so it's giving a equipped creature +1/+0. But whenever a equipped creature attacks, you may put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard. So it's a mill effect, which is going to help facilitate delirium. Truth-based sense. So we looked at explosive apparatus. So this is going to go 2 damage, although it's pretty obvious that it's sitting there. And then we've got a scarecrow in here. There's the 3/1 for 3. So that's our commons. Uncommons. You can see we've got a number of classic things, which would artifact creatures, golems, constructs, artifact equipment, that discard facilitator where we can equip by discarding a card, scarecrows, investigate, so you can use this to basically generate tokens, artifact tokens, and also colourless mana. More equipment, another scarecrow, a gargoyle, another piece of equipment, and another piece. What do we got at rare? Brain in a jar. Oh, we got this artifact that gobbles up clues. This cares about humans dying. Okay, so we do have artifact colour fixing. So this is a 2 that enters the battlefield tapped. You tap, choose a colour of a card in your graveyard, add 1 mana of that colour to your mana pool. So this is going to work best in any deck that basically is sliding by one means or another cards into your graveyard. That might be because you're trying to get delirium to trigger. Obviously not so good if your graveyard isn't full of mini cards. Mythic rare, there's nothing. Okay, good. And then finally, just the lands, as we're looking at this. The other thing I'm going to look at in a moment is removal, actually, before we wrap this up. So what we've got is we have a number of there's basically land at, I think, all the rarities except mythic. So we've got warped landscape, which is a sort of, well, a not very good evolving wilds. Basically, you can, with a difference here. So it's not a fetch, well, it is a fetch land, but it's bolted on to a land that generates colourless mana here. So also for two generic manas, I should say, you can tap it, sacrifice warped landscape, and search your library for a basic land card and put it into the battlefield tapped. Then shuffle your library. So you've got to pay for the privilege of doing that. So that's the only, what do they call it? A non-basic land at common. There is mana fixing there, but at a cost. At uncommon, we basically have some tap lands here. So they enter the battlefield tapped. There's no get out clause for that. They basically just come in and they are tapped. And those, interestingly enough, are in all of the, let me just check this. Yeah, so those are going to be in the enemy colours. So I'm assuming that when we go up a rarity, so our rares are actually the mana fixing for our allied colours. So that's the ones we actually care about for the tribal side of things. These are the allied coloured ones. So my point is that you're less likely to see these in either a sealed pool or in a draft. Whereas the enemy combinations are in the uncommon slot. We've also got another one here which also taps for colourless mana. For this, you're 3 colourless, you can return this from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So for if some reason this has ended up in the graveyard, you've decided to blow it up, your Grothag or whatever it's called has sort of swallowed it, you can get this back. And of course there's a number of other cards that you can sack cards as well. So you could have a thing going on here, but again this is at rare. This is at rare, so you're less likely to see this in a sealed or in a draft situation. Okay, maybe someone can tell me what happened to my. I'm sure when I was watching Loading Ready Run, somebody had a land that transformed into a demon, and maybe I'm missing something here. I don't know. Okay, so last thing we're going to look at. Let's look at stuff that destroys or does damage or exiles. So what do we got? So we've got Murderous Compulsion will destroy a target tap creature. The madness cost and the casting costs are actually the same. Now you think, well, where does that come in? Well, basically this is a sorcery. However, of course, if you discard it and then pay its madness cost, that's happening at instant speed. So if you manage to get a madness scenario going on, this becomes an instant. Puncturing Light is, we've seen these sort of destruction spells before in white where they will destroy a target attacking or blocking creature with power whatever. So with this one it's power 3. So you get a lot of these destruction spells in white which have caveats, and they tend to target attacking or blocking creatures. That's sort of creatures that are involved in combat. Rancid Rats has Death Touch on it. That's always interesting when you're looking at removal, is any creatures that have Death Touch. I find the combination here of Skulk and Death Touch really interesting, because this is a 1/1, it's going to effectively go under it, so it's going to not be blocked anyway by certain creatures. So it's, the Death Touch isn't going to come into it. I just find that sliding scale very interesting on this, because we haven't seen Skulk before. The reason why this has come up is because it has indestructible under certain conditions when you cast a non-creature spell. This will destroy target artifacts or enchantments, and this gives things indestructible. So in terms of like destroying stuff, the bits we're most interested in from common level are Murderous Compulsion, Puncturing Light, this thing which will destroy artifacts or enchantments, so it's basically a sideboard card, and our Death Touch creature. If we move up rarity, we've got this thing, which is an interesting combination of things. So we've got Sinister Concoction, which is actually an enchantment. So we cast it, it's in the battlefield. So it's black, we pay 1 life, we put the top card of your library into your graveyard, discard a card, sacrifice it, and then destroy a target creature. So there's loads of stuff going on with this card. You can see it's going to enable certain things as well. Destroy target attacking creature, you gain 3 life. Destroy target creature with power 4 or greater. So another thing you get in white is this sort of destroying large creatures. Moving up to rare, we don't have anything with destroying it. And mythic rare as well. So all our destroy stuff is in rare, common and uncommon. Very useful for obviously drafting and sealed. What about... Oops, how have I actually spelled exile right? Exile. We got. Now my guess is here. This basically the reason why we got lots of exile stuff is it's actually we're exiling stuff from a graveyard or exiling the card itself. So there's some bounce. We've got a bounce spell here. So it's very difficult when you're looking for things that exile. Using searches like this, you're going to get up all sorts of things which exile as a consequence. I'm just trying exile target. Reduced to ashes deals 5 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile instead. Exile target artifact or land. So we've got a lot of damage spells here, and again exile's coming up because it's a madness. Madness here. Counter target creature spell. If that's countered this well, exile it. So you can see number of again that's because of the madness. But that's kicking up lots of interesting things. We've got a card here which causes a life swing in here. So that, could finish off an opponent. This is going to be difficult to find stuff with madness in here. I've got to gain control here as well. Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to have a lot of luck. And obviously if we sat through all the cards we could probably... oh, here we go. Exile any number of target creatures you control. Return those cards to the battlefield under their owner's control at the beginning of the next end keep. So that's sort of flickering your stuff in and out. Exile target non-land permanent. We looked at that earlier actually. Exile target creature and all other creatures its controller controls with the same name as that creature. So there's quite a bit going on at the rare level. Again, it's like I said, it's hard to get these to filter. Yeah, Nahiri had an exile ability strapped to her for -2. And then the other thing in here, there's a number of cards from what I can remember. Let me just see if I can locate this. So what I'm looking for is something like the -2/-2 type cards, which basically reduce the power and toughness down, and so obviously will kill a creature. I think dead weight is in here actually. That's what I'm looking for. There we go, dead weight. So it's an enchantment that basically gives a creature -2/-2, which is pretty cool actually. I quite like this card. It's single black. So basically if it's a 2/2 or a anything 2, it's going to kill it. But if it's not, it's going to remain on it, so it's going to vastly reduce it. So if you've got a 3/3, it's going to become a 1/1 as long as this is attached to it. what I'm going to try and find is if I do creature gets, of course this is going to come up with all the pump spells as well, so just looking to see at common if we've got any like minus, target creature gets -4, -0, so that only affects the power. And obviously we're picking up all the prowess triggers. There's a few prowess cards in here as well. No, so this is all our, basically this is all, oh here's one, throttle. So throttle's in here, 4 and a black, pretty high casting cost. It is at common, however, and it gives -4 until end of turn. But the rest of the stuff that give creatures things are generally going to be the other sort, the pump spells. And there's a few things that give creatures vigilance and things like that. So I'm just going to have a look at an uncommon as well, and just see what we've got. So that just gives itself +2, -2. Tooth Collector enters the battlefield. Target creature and opponent controls get -1/-1. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, if there are 4 or more card types among cards in your graveyards, target creature that player controls gets -1/-1 until end of turn. So that's just -1/-1 strapped to this creature as an ETB, and also tied into a delirium trigger. I don't think there's anything of any consequence here. There's this, which is a pump spell. Well, there's equipment that pumps, so it's going to give a creature +4/+2, and whenever a equipped creature dies, if it was human, put a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying onto the battlefield and equip for 3. And I don't think. Oh, again, yeah. So we've got pump spell attached to one of Arlene Cord's abilities, in addition to vigilance and haste. And this is interesting. So this is a mythic that has flying. It's a 7/7 for 3 and 2 blue, but you need to basically make sure when you cast it, you don't have any cards in your hand, like it's the last card, because otherwise it's going to reduce the power and toughness. So basically that's as much as I want to cover in this sort of set overview. It's pretty long now. I can't even see the time on this actually. Oh, 1 hour and 7 minutes. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to wrap it up now. So again, this is probably another one of those test videos where I'm just testing the format out. I feel like probably I need to do a bit more preparation work on these, because it would nail it down a bit more. What I've tended to do is sort of just see where the cards take me. But hopefully you've enjoyed, and I'm hoping to do more videos like this when sets come out. Maybe a bit earlier. Maybe if I can catch. There's a spot between when the spoilers are all released and when the cards actually appear on the Gatherer. Unfortunately, ideally I like to do something when they actually appear in this program, which has only been today. So that gives me about, literally a couple of days before the pre-release to do that. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye for now.